I think the far more likely thing that Putin will use is his energy weapon, but the cyber attacks and the hackings and, every time he's done cyber attacks, the United States, especially in the last year, we've sort of raised an eyebrow but done nothing much. And that's where the direction I think it goes next.
It is my honor to be joined by KT McFarland. She is the former Deputy National Security Advisor under former President Donald Trump. Katie, thank you so much for being here.
It's an honor and a pleasure. And Virginia, if I could just say, as a proud woman of a much older generation, it really is great for me to see a woman in your generation who's taking advantage of the things that sort of my generation, I'm a retired lady, okay, but in my generation we had to fight for. There were women who were not in the national security field. Yeah. They were not in broadcasting. And then to see someone like you who's making full use of those opportunities, it makes me feel really proud.
Well, the Lord opens doors and it's exciting to get to walk through them. And thank you for what you have done to forge that path forward for people like me. So
thank you.
It's a privilege to get to talk to you today. I want to dive right in and talk about what is happening with Russia and Ukraine. So Russian President Vladimir Putin has launched a full-on invasion of Ukraine. What is Putin's ultimate goal? Is it just to take over Ukraine? Does he have a larger mission in mind? And how far do you think he's going to go in order to achieve his
the
goal?
thing about Putin, so I've studied Putin for 30 years, and he wrote a graduate dissertation. So he was in the KGB, and then the Soviet Union collapsed in the early 1990s. And he left the KGB, went to grad school, and he wrote a dissertation. And in the dissertation, he said, here's how we're going to make Russia great again. We are going to take the oil and natural gas and natural resources of Russia, take them out of the arms of the oligarchs, put them under state control, and then the government of Russia will use those energy resources to do two things. One, to make Russia rich, because it would export oil and natural gas to Europe, which needed it. And number two, it would give them political leverage. And that's exactly the roadmap he's followed for 30 years. His ultimate goal is to break the back of NATO and to separate the United States from our European allies and to not only sort of restore Russia to greatness in his mind, but to really just to undo the Cold War victory. We may have won, we think we won Cold War. He thinks that was only Cold War 1.0. He's in Cold War 2.0, and he plans to win that one, and he's going to use it with his energy resources and his vicious, brutal invasion of Ukraine. I do not think he stops with Ukraine. I think he digests it, and then I think he's going to start looking to the Baltics, those three little countries, Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, and there's a very narrow, I think it's like 100-mile long corridor that goes between Russia and Kaliningrad, which is a Russian port on the Baltic Sea. So I think that's where he looks next.
So then are we looking at entering another Cold War era as America with Russia?
Oh, Virginia, I think we're in the Cold War with Russia.
Okay.
The question is, if he goes after those three nations that I've said, Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, they are our NATO allies. So we have a treaty obligation, we, the United States, Germany, France, Canada, to come to their defense. And that's what Putin wants to break. Ukraine, for him, is an easier thing because it's not a NATO ally. And so I think that his ultimate goal, though, is if he gets Ukraine and the Germans don't help and the French don't help, he's going to say, well, I'll go for the rest of it.
How concerned should we be about Russia's use of nuclear weapons?
Well, any nuclear power, you should be concerned with their nuclear weapons. I mean, I taught nuclear weapons at MIT in the 70s, so I certainly have been worried about that forever. I think the far more likely thing that Putin will use is his energy weapon, but the cyber attacks and the hackings and, every time he's done cyber attacks, the United States, especially in the last year, we've sort of raised an eyebrow but done nothing much. And that's where the direction I think it goes next. But whenever you have nuclear powers, you have to remember there are nuclear weapons and there are consequences. I guess my big concern now with regard to Putin and Ukraine is that somebody miscalculates, that he miscalculates.
That Putin miscalculates?
Yeah, Putin has overreach, overstretch.
Okay. And what would that lead to?
Okay, so let's say, for example, Putin he's been in Ukraine, he thought he would have it sort of sewn up by now, it's not sewn up by now. What if he has massive cyber attacks on Ukraine? Now, with those cyber weapons, we're kind of new to this world of cyber weapons. Would it spill over to Poland? Would those cyber attacks sort of hit the U.S. banking system? If so, what is our response? We're kind of in uncharted territories, and that's what I'm concerned with.
And are we prepared for cyber attacks, for whatever Russia could throw at us?
I don't think we're nearly well prepared enough. You know, the United States, because if you think about it, so Russia, China, everything is under the control of the government, right? Even if it pretends to be an independent company, it's not. It's under the control of the government and the government's cyber offenses and defenses. In the U.S., we have that separation between government and private sector. So if you're a bank, let's say you're a small bank somewhere in the Midwest, and you have a cyber attack, who's defending you? Right? Nobody. Maybe you tell your customers, well, change your password, but nobody's really defending you. So the difficulty the United States has, it's our strength, but it's our great weakness, is that we do not have a national policy of how to defend against nuclear attack. Not nuclear, cyber attack.
Okay. So speaking of Ukraine specifically, the president there, Vladimir Zelensky, he's digging in his heels. He's staying with his people. He's not leaving the nation. Is Ukraine prepared to fend off Russia? Can they withstand this full-on affront from Russia?
Not for long, but God bless the Ukrainian people. Everyone assumed that they would cut and run, that the leaders, Zelensky and the other leaders of Ukraine, would disappear with their suitcases full of cash and be bought off and then replaced by Russian puppets. Everyone assumed that the Ukrainian military would throw down its arms and kind of disappear into the subways of Kiev. That's not happened. That they're actually, I was in touch with some people who are with the mayor of Kiev, Klitschko, last night, and they are fighting street to street in Kiev. So I think that the Ukrainian people are really just an inspiration to the world. Ultimately, sadly, I think Russia wins. But God bless the people of Ukraine.
Yeah, their courage is truly inspirational.
Courage is inspirational to everyone in the world.
Yeah. Well, the State Department, they have said that they're going to provide up to $350 million in immediate support for Ukrainian security and defense. Is there more the U.S. should be doing?
Well, there's more that the U.S. should have done. It's too late at this point. I mean, we could have given them more lethal weapons in the last year. President Biden and then President Obama before him did not give Ukraine what we call lethal weapons. They would give them soft powers, blankets, foodstuffs. Trump actually reversed that and gave significant lethal weapons, offensive and defensive weapons, to the Ukrainians. There's not much more we can do at this point. I mean, this is all going to be over in the next 72 hours.
So if you could sit down and talk with President Joe Biden this afternoon, how would you advise him?
Well, they'd never let me in the White House, Virginia. You know that.
But if they would, what would you advise him to be doing right now?
What I would, if he really wanted to break the back of Putin and to stop Putin now from doing the next step, I think Ukraine has been lost. But to stop him from doing the next power grab, go to the American people and say to the American people, I'm reversing course. When I came into office, I shut down American oil and natural gas. I shut down the export of liquefied natural gas around the world. I'm reversing course. I'm going to reopen the Keystone Pipeline. I'm going to reopen American energy. I'm going to increase the number of terminals of liquefied natural gas exports. So that's what he would say to the American people. We're reversing course today. He should then say to the Europeans, who are dependent upon Russia, he should say to them, look, you may have liked the fact that you were getting your energy from your neighbors in Russia, but look at the price this has caused you, political price. How about we help you, even at our expense? We will build liquefied natural gas terminals in Europe. You can have American natural gas. Liquefied natural gas is cheap, it's clean, it's reliable, and then get off of the Russian blackmail. And then I think what I would tell them is to go to the Russian people and say, look, here's the deal. When America becomes energy independent again, which we can do in a very short period of time, we are going to drive the price of oil and natural gas down. You are going to be bankrupt. We are going to encourage the Saudis to pump for more oil as well. And so Russia, you're finished. And that would be the way to deal with the Russians. I worked in the Reagan administration when we won the first Cold War. And the way we did it was pushing the price of oil down, bankrupting Russia, preventing Russia from getting bank loans, and then finally preventing the export of American technology to Russia. That's how we won the first Cold War. We can win the second Cold War exactly the same way.
Is China a wild card, though, in the equation that's different from the first Cold War? How should we be thinking about China's involvement? Should we be concerned about China?
That's about the only thing we should be really concerned about. You know, look, for 20 years we've been fighting the forever wars in the Middle East, and we took our eye off the real strategic threat, which was China. We always thought, 20, 30 years ago, well, we'll help China modernize, they'll get rich, they'll have a middle class, then they'll be an open society, a trading partner with ours, just like what happened with Japan and Korea and Germany. That wasn't China's plan. China's plan was, we're going to get rich, and then we're going to really go after American power in the world. So I think our greatest strategic adversary is a China, not a China that wants to compete, but a China which wants to crush and replace.
Okay. KT McFarland, thank you so much for your time today. We
It's
really
been great.
appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Virginia.
Thank you.
Thank you. God bless.